Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Fazia Salim Rashid, and I am broadcasting from my home in these times of social distancing to bring you IAGD's Friday night lecture. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have Ustadh Ubaydullah Evans with us. This is a joint venture between IAGD and Alim. And we have Ustadh Ubaydullah Evans tonight giving the Friday night lecture. The title of the lecture is Finding Peace in the Storm, a primer for Ramadan in the current climate. So before I begin, I know many of you are already very well aware of who Ustadh Ubaydullah Evans is. We've had the good fortune of having him speak at IAGD before, but just to remind you, or for those who have not had the opportunity to tune in and listen to him, Ustadh Ubaydullah Evans is Alim's first scholar in residence. He converted to Islam in high school. Upon his conversion, Ustadh Ubaydullah began studying some of the fundamental books of Islam under the private tutelage of local scholars, while simultaneously pursuing a degree in journalism from Columbia. Since then, he's studied at Chicagoland's Institute of Islamic Education. We're very honored to have you here with us this evening, Ustadh Ubaydullah.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا فمن يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ثم أما بعد. MashaAllah, it is a great honor and a great privilege to be back with the community in Detroit. IAGD is always something I look forward to, on the calendar. It's really kind of the Detroit community as a whole has become something of a home away from home. It regularly shows up on my calendar, and I look forward to it. I also want to thank everybody for giving up a Friday evening in which they could be reading any number of things, watching any number of things, doing any number of things inside the house, to spend this evening with us. And we are graced and honored by our presence with you and by your presence with us. This is a very difficult time, needless to say. We are perhaps coming upon the most important time in our sacred calendar, Shahr Ramadan, the month of Ramadan. And this Ramadan figures to be different than any other Ramadan any of us have ever experienced, and different than any Ramadan than anyone we know has ever experienced. And I think the fact that we're looking critically at how we are going to engage Ramadan under these unique circumstances, nothing could be more pertinent. Nothing could be more relevant. Nothing could be more important. So the person who had the foresight and had the vision to arrange this kind of presentation, this kind of lecture at this time, I want to commend them. I think this is an excellent topic, and I hope to speak to it in the process of having a conversation with the community, because for me to speak about this as though I have experience and I've done this before and I know exactly what to do, everyone would know that that isn't true. That what we're tossing out are just probable solutions, explanations, ideas about how we are to engage Ramadan at this time. Would you excuse me just 1 second? Kita, go upstairs, boy. I have to put the towel in. My daughter is coming down. This is much different than actually being in a community. Bismillah. In any event, sorry about that. The uniqueness of this Ramadan. Now, the good thing is that at a time like this, we're experiencing something that the Prophet ﷺ did mention, the reality of ta'un, or a plague. And these are times that call for increased patience. And the Ramadan is all about patience. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ said in an authentic hadith that patience is half of faith. All right, patience is half of faith, and the Ramadan is half of patience. So at a time where we need enhanced and increased patience, we are being given the gift of Ramadan, because Ramadan is all about patience. It's all about sabr. So this is something that, to my mind, is a felicitous development for the Muslim community. This is something we should be looking forward to. Ramadan is also a month of mercy. So if there was any time that we would want to appeal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the depths of our very souls, what in Arabic is called tadarru', a prayer that one prays in a manner that expresses that they have nothing else. Ramadan is certainly the time in which we will want to pray in that manner. You know, Ibn Ata'illah Sakandari, the great Alexandrian scholar and man of spirituality, he said, wisdom is knowing that God's will is always above what you want, right? Whenever something happens to us and we experience, something unpredicted or something adverse, many of us say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Truly we belong to God, and unto God we're returning. We also say, Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah, that there is no power, no might except by God. He said that wisdom is knowing that God's will is always above your will, that what God wants is always above what you want. Unfortunately, we don't see that when things are going well, when things are going as we would like them to go, when there is concordance between what we want and what Allah wants. We don't see that divide. We don't see that line as sharply. But when we want something, despite how willful we are, despite the depth of our desire, despite the intricacy of our planning, but God wants something different, this is cause to say, Subhanallah. Glorified is God. Exalted is God. So Ramadan, coming at a time in which all of us, all of humanity, those of us that have the gift of Islam, we have the correct language to express what we feel in this moment, that God's will is predominant, our will subservient, our will overcome by his will. And because of the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, we know how to express that. Other people, though they cannot express that as readily, they are certainly feeling that. They are certainly experiencing that. So this Ramadan comes at a time in which all of us are experiencing something that is endemic to our human condition. That's the recognition of limitation. Recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his mashi'ah, his will is the will. And the Ramadan, in a certain sense, is a kind of annual activity in which we acquaint ourselves with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, think about this. Allah Ta'ala says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Fasting has been prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you might learn taqwa, so that you might learn to be conscious of God, so that you might learn to have reverence of God. In this time, as we are all confined to our homes, our daily routines have been disrupted. The global economy is tanking. And this is all happening because of something microscopic that we can't even see. Only God can do something like that. And one of the things about worshiping an omnipotent God who has power and is not answerable to anyone for how he uses his power is that sometimes he uses his power in ways that we don't like. But if we are wise, when we experience that, we will say, Subhanallah, glorified is God, exalted is God. Fasting is about much of the same. Food is something that is good for you, right? Kulu washrabu, eat and drink. The only thing that God tells us to do in normal circumstances is to eat according to what he has prescribed and to drink according to what he has prescribed. But in general, food is good for you. In general, drink is good for you. In general, conjugal relations, these are good for married people. But if God tells you to govern your consumption of those things in the manner that he has prescribed, in the time frame that he has dictated, if you recognize that what he wants is above what you want, then you adhere to that. And so, in a sense, what we're experiencing vis-a-vis the coronavirus, vis-a-vis COVID-19, this imposition, if you will, of the will of God, Ramadan is the time in which we embrace the will of God voluntarily. We do it to show God that you are our master. You are our Lord. We are your servants. And good is what you deem good. Bad is what you deem bad. What's fitting, what's suitable is what you deem fitting and what you deem suitable. When you deem it fitting and when you deem it suitable. And so, in a sense, the spirit of Ramadan is consonant with what we're experiencing right now. So I think that this year will represent one of the smoothest transitions into the month of Ramadan that we have ever experienced. You know, many people talk about Ramadan being this time when normally you can do whatever you want. You know, if you're out and if you're like me, like I graze all day. I'm always snacking. Oh, if my wife buys like from Costco one of those jars of like chocolate covered almonds, I mean, I can probably take out the whole jar in 2 days, just taking a handful there, a handful here. Whenever I get thirsty, I take a drink. You don't even think about it. But Ramadan is a time in which you're thinking now about everything that you're doing. You're thinking about the time that it's appropriate to eat, the time that it's not appropriate to eat. You're thinking about these things now. And this is what taqwa is. The word taqwa, which is the point of Ramadan, right? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you might have taqwa. It comes from the same Arabic root as wiqaya, which means literally to protect. Taqwa comes from the same trilateral root as wiqaya. Wiqaya is protection. So taqwa, terminologically, has always been taken to mean to protect oneself from the anger of God, right? This is why some people translate it as fear, but I don't like that because fear has a very negative connotation. It's better translated as reverence. At this point, as a man that is 30, I'm not afraid that my mother can physically hurt me. I'm not afraid that she will physically hurt me. But I fear displeasing my mother. I fear earning her displeasure. I fear her disapproval of me. So this means I revere my mother. So taqwa is a kind of, you're protecting yourself against the displeasure of God. But in the process of protecting yourself against God's displeasure, you monitor your behavior very closely. You think about what you say. You think about what you do. You think about where you go. You think about who you associate with. You think about the way that you spend your money. You think about the way that you spend your time. So taqwa is about inculcating and learning a kind of cautiousness with regard to our behavior. Now, coronavirus, subhanallah, you see taqwa, but it's not taqwa Allah. It's not taqwa of God. It's taqwa al-mard. It's taqwa of sickness. For once, we are very careful about the surfaces that we touch. We are very careful to wash our hands, and we make sure that we wash them for 20 seconds. I say Al-Fatiha to myself as I'm washing my hands, making sure that I make it through the entire Fatiha, right? We are careful to disinfect our phones. Some of us have taken to wearing masks. We are careful to remain 6 feet from someone that is sneezing or coughing. Look at how self-conscious we've become. It's amazing. I tell people all the time, the way that we're thinking about contracting this virus, and it's affecting our behavior, affecting what we do, affecting where we go, affecting what we touch, affecting who we get close to. This is the way that we should be fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In exactly the same manner, thinking about what we do. Right? That level of self-consciousness, right? I wasn't like that before. Honestly, my wife, her background is in public health, and she's something of a germaphobe, just keeping it 100, and she would, take disinfectant wipes and wipe down the seats at the movie theater. Look, I know I'm the only one that watches movies. You guys are good Muslims, I know, just me. But she would take the disinfectant wipes and wipe down the seats at the movie theater, and would always wipe the cart, and would never like grab door handles or anything. And I thought the whole thing was crazy. I'm like, look, if I drive myself mad, fretting over something microscopic, that would be more injurious to my mental health than any of these germs will be to my physical health. So I refuse. I'm going to just grab my grocery cart and wash my hands when I get home. I'm going to open the door with my hand. I'm not going to use my shirt sleeve. And it was like, I was like committed to this idea. With the onset or the advent of the news about COVID-19, I think I've become more careful than she is. Right? I'm lysoling my phone, and I don't touch hard surfaces. And today I actually I wore a mask, and it's amazing how I have assumed this heightened awareness. And as I was doing all of this, I said, this is exactly what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is trying to teach us through the month of Ramadan. this same heightened awareness. Now, the reason why food, drink, and spousal relations, the reason why those things are used to teach this level of awareness, this level of consciousness, is because nothing comes more naturally to the human creature than those three things, other than breathing. And I always say, Alhamdulillah, Allah didn't make us fast from breathing. Alhamdulillah. Right? Other than breathing, there is nothing that perhaps comes more naturally to the human creature than eating, drinking, and procreating. And if you can govern according to the will of God, the way that you do those things, you can govern the way that you do anything according to the will of God. And the only thing that you have to do is just continue with the awareness that we've developed, since we've been social, distancing and just being very conscious of what we do. That's the first thing. The second thing is not about fasting at all. Many people wrongly assume that Ramadan is only about fasting. If you were to ask any Muslim, what is Ramadan about? I'm guessing that 9 out of 10 would probably say Siyam, fasting. The kids would say Hadaya, gifts. That's what the kids, they think, my kids, they think Ramadan, they think gifts. Some people, a gourmand, like a food lover, would say all of those splendid iftars, all of those wonderful iftars. Once my youngest daughter, in fact, my eldest daughter, but at the time she was my only daughter. That's probably why I got it confused. She heard us talk about iftar so much. Every day we would start talking about iftar like around dhuhr time, that she finally said, Dad, who is iftar? And why are we getting so much stuff for him? Right? So some people, they think Ramadan is about iftars, all of those splendid celebratory iftars. Some people think Ramadan is all about fasting. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. It is the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed. Now, Alhamdulillah, the Muslim community is possessed of an irrepressible beauty, so that the month of Ramadan began as something mostly devotional, and Eid was mostly celebratory, right? That's kind of, if somebody came to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, radiallahu anhu, or came to Umar ibn al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu, or came to Ali, and they said to either of them, to any of them, are you guys coming to my iftar tonight? They would be taken aback by that, because you have no mention of these kind of large celebratory iftars, in the context of the Prophet ﷺ, or the Salaf al-Salih, or the first 3 generations of Islam. I would even say this is probably kind of like, Ramadan being, a time of these large celebratory dinners. This is something fairly recent. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's actually something very beautiful. MashaAllah, the Prophet ﷺ, upon entering Medina, he said, "At'imu at-ta'am," to feed one another. And Ramadan is definitely a time in which we do that. So I'm not in any way saying this isn't a beautiful tradition that we've created. But Ramadan was really a devotional time. Even the Salat al-Taraweeh, which, mashallah, the Muslim community's love for Salat al-Taraweeh in the masjid is something that has always been one of the great mysteries of our community. There's a few our community has always been possessed of a few mysteries, in my estimation. One of them is like, why are some people so serious about halal meat? Now, I only eat the biha meat, but I know some people, they will drink wine, but tell you that meat is not halal. I'm like, Merlot is not halal either. Yeah, right. That's one of those things that is just a mystery of our community. Another mystery is you have some people, they don't pray. I mean, we mean like salawat al-khamsa, the 5 prayers. They never attend the masjid, but they must be present every night of Ramadan for Salat al-Tarawih. Now, I'm not even going to talk about priorities, right? That this is a nawafil, this is a sunnah, right? This is a non-obligatory prayer. This is a regular practice of the Prophet ﷺ. The fara'id, the canonical prayers, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, these are the prayers about which we will all be questioned. However, I trust that the person doing this loves listening to the Quran. And maybe they think if they can stand for the entire month listening to the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this will in some way be a purification for them or something like that. Inshallah khair. I hope that it will be a purification for them and it will encourage them to spend more time with the Quran, more time with the community. But I do have to say something about that. This sunnah of gathering in the masjid every night, completing a khatam of the Quran, this is actually not a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. A lot of people don't know that, right? It's something that in our community, we have great enthusiasm for listening to the Quran in the masjid, in Salat al-Tarawih, in Ramadan. But this is not a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet prayed Tarawih one night. And as he was praying, he was praying in the masjid. People assembled behind him and they prayed with him in congregation and he did not stop them. The next day, he was praying inside of his house. And people still assembled in the masjid because the hujurat, or the apartments of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, they were adjacent to the courtyard of Masjid al-Nabawi, of the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. So if he was praying inside the apartment, inside the hujurat, inside the room, people could still assemble in the salah, assemble in the musalla, assemble in the courtyard of the masjid, and they could follow along while he was praying. And so he did that 2 consecutive nights. Then a very large gathering assembled on the 4th night, expecting him to come out again. And the Prophet didn't come out and pray Tarawih at all, not in the musalla, nor did he pray in his home. And when he was questioned about why, he said, it's because I did not want anyone to assume that this was a fard, that this was an obligatory prayer that one has to make. So my point in saying all of this is that in this month, we might not be able to pray Tarawih as we normally pray Tarawih, as many of us normally pray Tarawih at the masjid. But that should not mean that we are not connecting with the Quran. Right? شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed. Because we don't have access to the masjid and we won't be able to pray behind the qari, listening to that beautiful recitation, as is actually my regular practice, we will have to pray at home this year. And for those of you praying at home, I want you to know that Tarawih is a nawafil prayer. It's a sunnah غير مؤكدة, a sunnah that is not highly emphasized, and it can be prayed with any portions of the Quran that you know. One can pray Salat al-Tarawih, and you can read Surah al-Ikhlas in the first rak'ah. You can read Surah al-Nas in the second rak'ah, and you can do that for every rak'ah of Tarawih. And that is a Tarawih. Those of us who know more Quran, we should of course recite more of the Quran that we know to remain acquainted with the Quran that we know. But I think this Ramadan will be different in that we will have to connect with the Quran in the way the companions of the Prophet ﷺ connected with the Quran, through reading the translation of the meaning, and through praying ourselves in Qiyam al-Layl, in Tahajjud, in Taraweeh. But this is something that might be good for us because it might be less sentimental, it might be less sanctimonious, and it might be more personal, right? It might be more personal. MashaAllah, the beauty and the inspiring nature of the Quran being recited in its original language is undeniable. I know people that don't speak a word of Arabic, but can put the Quran on and be moved to tears every time they hear the Quran, simply because they know these are the words of God, spoken into eternity, uncreated, and will be spoken until the end of this creation. And I think the profundity of that realization can move them to tears. And then you have people like me that are blessed to actually, be acquainted with Arabic, but might not be able to engage the recitation of the Quran at the same level, emotionally and spiritually. So I'm not saying anything to lessen the significance of listening to the Quran and reading from the Quran in Arabic. But for those of us who aren't acquainted with Arabic, to actually read from the translation of the meaning of the Quran in a language that we speak, so that the Quranic discourse can work on us, it can interrogate us. This is something that we'll have more of an opportunity to do this month because we are self-quarantined. We won't be able to rely on going to the masjid, reading behind the qari in order to connect with the Quran. We'll have to connect with the Quran in that way. And this is something that we should be looking forward to. It will be different. It will be different, but we should still be looking forward to it. Thirdly, Ramadan is a month usually that we give lots of charity. We give lots of charity. You go to the masjid, and then in between the 8th and 9th raka'at, you always have a fundraiser, right? So every night, there's usually an opportunity to engage in some khair, to be a fa'alul al-khair, to do some good. And just because you will be at home, hopefully connecting with the Quran, reading from the Quran, or praying Salat al-Tarawih, and with these Muslim fundraisers, you never know. Somebody might come straight through your front door like, look, no Taraweeh without a fundraiser. I heard you were praying Taraweeh in your home. I came to do a fundraiser. You know what? I might come through your door. Alam is doing house call fundraisers for the Taraweeh that's being prayed in the home. So get ready. I will have my, antibacterial mask and my gloves, but I'm coming. No, of course not. It would still, and I recognize that if there is ever a time in which Giving charity is difficult. It's a time in which we have heightened concern about our own stability. This is when it's very, if you feel relatively secure about your own finances, about your future, about the future of your children, it's much easier to give charity. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Al-ajru ala qadr al-mashaqqa." The reward for an act of good is given in accordance with the difficulty experienced when doing that act of good. In Surah Al-Balad, we have what? The person that feeds fi yawmin masghaba, not at any time, but a person that gives in a day of privation. This is the aqaba. This is the steep path. This is the steep path, right? So giving charity at a time of ease is a beautiful thing. You're still moving. If you're giving charity in a time of ease, a time where the economy is stable, your 401k is looking pretty good, retirement is looking pretty good. If you're giving charity at that time, it's still blessed. But that's like going downhill. You're moving, but you're going down the hill. But the aqaba, the steep path, is giving charity fi yawmin masghaba. Giving charity in a time of deprivation. Giving charity in a time of privation. Giving charity. Makita, hold on, babe. Okay, that was my youngest daughter telling me something. Giving charity in a time of difficulty. So even though the economic forecast is terrible, right? Even though you won't have anybody giving you guilt-inducing ahadith, guilt-inducing ayat of Quran, exhorting you to give, encouraging you to give. We should begin this Ramadan planning to give charity in the manner that we have always given charity. The only thing is, this time we will have to take the initiative. We will actually have to seek out those charitable sources. Now, yeah, people will definitely send emails and text messages, but that's not the same as being at the masjid with someone that you can see, an embodied voice telling you this is important, this is vital, this deserves your largesse, this, you won't have that this year. But the true Jawad al-Kaf, the true person of generosity, will still be looking for those avenues in which they can donate. And they should rest assured that that charity will be even more meritorious. And charity at a time like this is a makhraj. This is a way out. This is a wasila to tafrij. This is a means of alleviation. See, at this time, we can take one of two approaches. We can get very scared. We can, uh, um, fall into the trap of presumed self-sufficiency. Stinginess, bukhl, is always connected to a false presumption of self-sufficiency. Oh, this is when you see the beauty of the Quran. Yeah, it's things like this that make you say, okay, this book is definitely the work of someone that understands the human condition in all of its depth. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says what? Bakhila wastaghna. First bakhila. First the person displays stinginess. Then wastaghna. The false presumption of self-sufficiency. Because if you believe that you are solely responsible for taking care of yourself, then it's counterintuitive to give. Why would I give? Everything I have to use to take care of me, my family, my responsibilities. I'm not going to give anybody anything. But if you believe that Allah is your Raziq, Allah is the Razzaq, then of course it's very easy to give, because in your giving charity, even at a time like this, you're acknowledging that, Ya Rab, you are in control. You ensure my safety. You ensure my security. You ensure my satiety. You ensure my stability. And if this time demands anything from us, as we experience a full-on global pandemic and plague, it is that testimony. Ya Rab, you are in control. And I want all of my actions in this Ramadan, and even now before this Ramadan, I want all of my actions to bear witness to that. I want all of my actions to bear testimony to that you are in absolute control. And inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make this a means of tawbah for us. So just to reiterate, this will be a Ramadan in which we will be at home with our families. And the fasting that we will be doing will be very similar in terms of the awareness and the self-consciousness that fasting is supposed to inculcate. It will be very similar to what we're experiencing in the wake of COVID-19. Just that care, that heightened awareness, that presence, that special kind of presence. I think you'll find a very interesting parallel there. The second thing was شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, the month of Ramadan in which the Quran was revealed. Just because we don't have the luxury of going to the masjid, of praying Salat al-Taraweeh, don't miss an opportunity to connect with the Quran. And yes, it's important to listen. It's important to read from the Mus'haf. But it's also important at this time, especially now, to let the Quran interrogate you. Let the Quran probe you. So reading the Quran in a language that you can understand is very important. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. Perhaps we revealed the Quran in Arabic, لَعَلَّهُمْ يَعْقِلُونَ. We revealed the Quran in Arabic Quran so that they perhaps might reflect upon it. The Quran is meant to be engaged actively with the mind. Because we don't have the luxury of praying Taraweeh in the masjid with a qari, maybe this will be the Ramadan in which we pray Taraweeh with the Quran that we've committed to memory, and then we look at the meaning of what we've committed to memory. And even if we do speak Arabic, we think about the meaning of what we're reciting and what we've committed to memory. And then third, three simple advices. This will be a Ramadan in which you won't be at the masjid being held hostage to give charity. This won't be that Ramadan, I'm guessing. But still make an effort to give charity. MashaAllah, we have transformed Ramadan into a time of celebration, into a great time of community. And this is very beautiful. Ramadan should be about those things. But this might be a more austere Ramadan. This might be a Ramadan of more stillness, a Ramadan of more reflection, a Ramadan of more contemplation, a Ramadan in which our worship might take more interiorized forms, as opposed to, going out and, serving your wife, serving your children, serving your husband, taking care of your parents, checking on your neighbors, This is a Ramadan in which all of those neglected, overlooked aspects of that Muhammadan character, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will actually have to put those things into practice, because some of the grander, more noticeable, more practiced elements of our devotional character in the month of Ramadan, we won't have access to those. So this will be a Ramadan that pushes us toward greater sincerity. One of the things about all of the ibadah that you do at home is that ibadah, it is not compromised by riyah, by ostentation, by showing off. And Ramadan, mashallah, fasting is all about repudiating riyah. It's all about repudiating, ostentation. Because fasting is the one act of worship that if you do it, only Allah knows that you're doing it. This is what makes fasting so blessed. Because fasting is really between Allah and the servant. And this is why Allah Ta'ala says, كل عمل ابن آدم له إلا الصيام فهو لي وأنا أجزي به. Every act of the son or daughter of Adam is for him or her, except for fasting. It is mine, and I give a special reward for it. In this month of Ramadan, inshallah, everything that we do will be like that fasting. The public will have no share in our taraweeh, in our charity, in our salawat al-khamsa, in our qira'ah. Because when you're at work and you work with other Muslims and they come past your office and they see you reciting the Mus'haf and they say, mashallah, mashallah, you always do a khatam every Ramadan. Nobody will be able to see that. The only people that will see you this Ramadan is the people who know your struggles, know the real you. So I hope with this month of Ramadan, being a Ramadan in which we will have to embrace khalwa, embrace seclusion, we will be more focused on working on the real us, inshallah. So with that, I'll stop, inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. Are there any questions?
Jazakallah, thank you so much, Ustadh Ubaydullah. That was just really a wonderful primer for Ramadan in this climate that we're in the thick of, and I think that we'll be in for quite some time. So it's really nice to start thinking about these things now. I would not be doing Alim or IAGD full good service if I didn't go on the coattails of you mentioning charity and asking for all of you that are listening, those of you that enjoy listening to Ustadh Ubaydullah and enjoy the Friday night programs that IAGD has, please think about donating to IAGD and Alim. Though the masjid doors are closed, there is a lot that goes into just the maintenance of the building and utilities and the behind the scenes to allow these programs to come to you. So as Ustadh Ubaydullah mentioned, please remember Alim and IAGD in your charitable giving. I wanted to remind people that for those of you that are on YouTube Live right now, feel free to submit questions and we can hopefully get those over to Ustadh Ubaydullah. I wanted to say that, I'm really excited about making sure that my kids use reading Surah Fatiha as the 20-second rule instead of singing happy birthday twice. For all my kids that are listening in the next room now know that that'll be the new 20-second rule. There were so many great points that you made, and as somebody who is in their, upper 30 plus range, I look forward to the solitude at times. And there's really so much growth that happens, at least I know for my generation and above. But a lot of times I think about Ramadan as a parent, as you were, your little one was coming in, and they really, really look forward to the communal aspects. Ramadan is about engaging in a collective strength. It's about knowing that everybody's going through the hunger pains together. Everybody's going through preparing for this iftar person together, and particularly for our youth that have positive influence from that. The positive peer pressure when they come to the masjid and they see all of those that are standing for, all 8 or all 20 rakahs of tarawih, or those that are reading with that beautiful tajweed, and it motivates the youth. What would your advice be to the youth and to parents of kids that are going to be at home that find it harder to connect without that personal connection in the masjid or with their peers?
Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I do expect that to be very difficult. I think, whenever we talk about peer pressure, now there's a tendency to mention peer pressure as something singularly bad. It's pressure to do bad things. But no, good peer pressure, exists as well. So that people that aren't, particularly committed, aren't particularly devout, seeing other people fasting, seeing other people praying, seeing other people giving, seeing other people reading from the Quran. This is certainly something that encourages people. And this Ramadan, you might not be able to experience that live. I think there are 2 ways that we can deal with that. The first is that this will be a Ramadan in which you really have to dig deep. You really, really have to dig deep. You really have to struggle to make your connection with these ibadat personal. You have to struggle. This is one of the culture. I know that some people mention culture as like this battery of practices that is diametrically opposed to real Islam. No, I actually think that the relationship between culture and Islam is much more complicated than that. When I think about culture, I think about me and Christmas. Because I didn't, I wasn't raised, Muslim. I converted to Islam when I was 16 or so, and even now, after having been Muslim for many years, alhamdulillah, as soon as Black Friday hits, it's like I can feel something in my bones. Like it's the holiday. My aqidatan, la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, right? Wa Isa Rasulullah. You know, you know, that's my aqidah, man. There's nothing worthy of worship except God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God, and Jesus is the messenger of God. But culturally, I'm so connected to that time of year. The movies that are shown at that time of year, the songs that come on the radio at that time of year, the foods that become available, eggnog. Look, I hope it's not haram to not non-alcoholic eggnog now, mind you, but eggnog and chestnuts and Christmas type candy canes. And I recognize that some Muslims are connected to Ramadan in the same way. That it's like, oh man, as soon as the announcement is given that the Hilal has been sighted, they just feel something, all of a sudden, something begins to change in terms of how they feel. And I get that. And this Ramadan could be a little different. And so, without the benefit of that strong participatory culture, a personal relationship will have to be developed with this. And we shouldn't run from that. It's like, I know normally part of what this time is about is like this amazing communal activity, this amazing kind of shared cultural activity. This month, this Ramadan, this year, in the absence of that, it kind of is just about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's a little tougher, but that's certainly more meritorious, right? The second thing is kind of what we're doing right now is like, I'm unable right now to travel to Detroit to come to IAGD. I'm unable to, coexist with your community in the way that I would like to, but we're adapting. We're doing what sometimes I think we might be surprised when we see the rewards that Allah Ta'ala has in store for us, just because all of us now are making tayammum. This is all tayammum. This is all tayammum. This is all, tayammum is when water isn't available, you're allowed to make ablution with dirt. So now it's like, this has become like a culture of tayammum. Like these lectures via Zoom, tayammum. Some people are like, streaming khutbahs and still praying 4 rak'ah of dhuhr. I hope. So I hope they're not, right? I hope this is a kind of tayammum. Some people, this is all tayammum. We might have to extend this culture of adaptation by doing Zoom calls, calling people, trying to make it as communal and festive. If we know we have young children that are in need of that kind of festivity, we have to try to give them as much of it as we can. So, maybe connecting with friends, family, virtually, uh, being sure to, if this is going to be a Ramadan that we spend at home, this should be the most festive Ramadan that we've ever had at home. I mean, I am very particular about the decor of my house. I'm very particular about it. I'm very, very particular about it. And so normally I don't like lights going up my stair rails and all of those cheap Ramadan designs and the fanus hand. I'm like, look, aesthetically, my space has to look a certain way so that I'm comfortable in it. But my wife, she always says, whatever, and puts up the decorations anyway. You know what I'm saying? Whatever, and puts up the decorations anyway. This year, I'm hoping we'll be able to really go all out, because I know my children are going to miss going to the masjid for iftar and tarawih and seeing friends. We're going to try and make this a really, really fun, really, really festive Ramadan, with foods that they like, with activities, with lots of family time, trying to give them as much of that as we can, inshallah.
Inshallah, I'm looking forward to seeing some pictures of what your house is going to look like, with lights and all. But I think it's a really good point that this Ramadan is really going to be about, it's almost like a purification of our soul and intentions, kind of recommitting to Allah, as you said, with pure taqwa, pure dedication to the Quran, and may Allah make it easy for us to
Ameen.
gain that closeness. I really think that it reminds me that we all are struggling a bit in this new normal of life in a pandemic, but there are good things that can come out of this. And
Certainly,
what
yeah.
I hear from your wonderful primer is that reconnecting to the Quran, having purity in your giving to charity, particularly when you yourself might be struggling, and submitting to the will of Allah. There's a reason that these times fall upon us, and perhaps this is our way of gaining that extra level of closeness. So I truly appreciate all the wisdom you have imparted on us to help get us to that level. Alim always has great programs. You provide so much wisdom and knowledge, and we really appreciate that. On the same note, with Alim and other scholars in Alim, Imam Munir is going to be doing a series of lectures, I believe. It's the etiquette of solitude. I believe that's a partnership with IAGD and Alim. There'll be registration out for that soon, either on the Alim website and or IAGD's website. So everybody look out for that. That's going to be really great. We'll be fortunate enough to have Imam Munir remotely, I imagine, the way we're able to have you here, Ustadh Ubaydullah, through Chicago and the sound waves of Zoom. So I really, really appreciate it. I'm just making sure there aren't any other resounding questions that I missed on the YouTube feed. But I think overall, this was a pretty good success, linking in across the states and border lines with social distancing. So Jazakallah khair, Jazakallah to you, to your family, for allowing you to dedicate your time, and to your daughter who had to be patient. It's half a thing.
I'm getting to her now, inshallah.
Very good. Jazakallah. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in this evening. We're able to have you here, Ustadh Ubaydullah, through Chicago and the sound waves of Zoom. So I really, really appreciate it. I'm just making sure there aren't any other resounding questions that I missed on the YouTube feed. But I think overall this was a pretty good success, linking in across the states and border lines with social distancing. So Jazakallah khair, Jazakallah to you, to your family, allowing you to dedicate your time and to your